Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Tumeva Mada Cha Pita Tvameva Tumeva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tumeva Vidya Dravinam Tumeva Sarvam Amriteshwari Ma Tumeva Sarvam Amriteshwari Ma Tumeva Sarvam Amriteshwari Ma. Om Amriteshwariyai Namah. Let's begin with a short meditation and kindly sit straight, making sure your vertebral column, your spinal column is erect. Now slowly close your eyes. Try to focus on your breathing normally, but with full awareness of each and every inhalation and exhalation that occurs through the body. Visualize as if we are completely relaxing. And through each and every breath, and feel completely relaxed. And now we'll chant Om 3 times. And as we chant Om, imagine the sound of Om rising from your navel area. And visualize the sound rising through the spinal column, cleansing the body, the mind, and the atmosphere around you. Now kindly take a deep breath. Now feel the reverberations of Om in each and every cell of your body. Now as you slowly shift your focus to your breathing. Observe each and every inhalation and exhalation. Now as you breathe in, chant the mantra, syllable Ma, silently along with your in-breath. And hold your breath, just only for a few seconds, not too long. And then as you breathe out, chant Om, along with your exhalation. So Ma, hold your breath. Om, when you exhale. And continue like this for some time. Ma is a representation of divine love and Om, divine light. Now as you breathe and as the sounds of Ma and Om become more and more subtle, imagine that your heart is being filled with love and light. And feel the expansion of the heart, just like the flower bud that blooms into a fully blossomed flower. Feel the love, feel the light in your heart. Now visualize this love and light going out from your heart to all the beings in this world, just like the rays of the sun, and the love from your heart going to each and every being, both sentient and insentient. And as you feel the love and light, let's pray for the welfare and the peace of the whole world. Let's chant Loka Samasta 9 times. And during this time, imagine all the beings become more peaceful, more loving, and filled with light, and also filled with silence and compassion. Om Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta 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 Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Dhyayamo Dhavla Bhagundhanavatim Tejomayim Naistikim Snigdha Pangavilokinim Bhagavatim Mandasmidashri Mukhim Valsalyamritavarshinim Sumadhuram Sankirtanalapinim Shamangi Madhusikta Suktim Amritanandatmikam Ishwarim. Om Narayanam Patmabhuvam Vasishtam Shaktim Chatatputram Parasharam Cha Vyasam Shukam Gaudapadam Mahandam Govinda Yogindram Adhasya Sishyam Sri Shankaracharyam Adhasya Patmapadam Cha Hastamalakam Cha Shishyam tam todakam Vartikagāryamanyan asmad gurun santadamanadosmi. In the last session, we saw the teachings of Jada Bharata to the king and what happened was the king Rahugana was listening to the advice given by Jadabharata, realizing that he was a great master who had come not in disguise but just as an ordinary person. And he was asking these questions, different types of questions, which Jadabharata had asked him. And in fact, he was asking for clarification. And Jadabharata was saying that the mind that functions as the limiting adjunct of the spirit is the reason why we go through the transmigratory life. And until one understands this and try to destroy the mind, and he says, kill him, kill the mind. It will generate suffering, sorrow, infatuation, diseases, attachments, desires, enmity, and sense of possession. And how it has grown so powerful is because that we have neglected. And we have neglected to control the mind, and not only that, we also fed them through the various sense perceptions that comes into the mind and trying to enjoy the different sense objects. So right now, Jadabharata is telling, kill the mind with the arrow of service to the feet of the teacher, the Guru, Hari, who is Guru is invariably Hari, that is Lord Vishnu himself. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu. So serve the Guru just like you serve Vishnu, and the teacher will give you enlightenment. And he further, Rahugana further questions Jadabharata. And he says, O Supreme Yogin, salutations to thee who has taken a body for the good of mankind. Salutations to thee who has devalued the body as worthless because thy being steeped in thy inherent bliss. And salutations again to one whose constant intuitive knowledge is masked under the form of a degraded Brahmana. O enlightened one, just as a potent medicine is to a man suffering from high fever, just as cold water is to one burned by the heat of summer, so your words have been a rejuvenating ambrosia to me who have been deprived of true insight by the powerful poison from the bite of the cobra of body consciousness. So he's saying, he's giving so much of respect now to Jadabharata. And he's saying salutations because you find the body worthless. Why? Because you're steeped in inherent bliss. So you don't worry about your body. You don't even know that a body exists. And also, salutations to that person who has masked his knowledge. Like a degraded Brahmana. He walks around like a Brahmana, good for nothing, and just wearing some torn cloths. And he says, now, the words that have come from you is like the medicine that is being given to a person who is suffering from high fever. And also, it has been rejuvenating, just like ambrosia given to a person who has been bit by a powerful cobra. And here, what is the cobra? The cobra of body consciousness. So the body consciousness is the snake that has bitten me. That is here Rahugana says. And on the doubts I have in respect of these matters, I shall question you afterwards. But now please be pleased to expound to me your words of spiritual import in a manner that is easily understandable to me. So now he's saying, the doubts I can ask you later, but just explain in a manner which is easily understandable to me. Here, the author, that is Lord Shuka, has added this because it should be understandable to us, not to Rahugana. So he's saying, just put it very simply. If you put it in a very complex manner, nobody is going to understand. And O great yogin, you have stated that the actually felt and therefore the unerased fatigue and its cause, namely bearing the palanquin, are all only provisionally spoken about and have no place in determining the nature of the truth. This is a statement which causes confusion in my mind. So you remember earlier when Rahugana kicked and scolded Jadabharata, he was saying that the fatigue is only for a person who is identified with the body. And you cannot say that you can equate it with a person who is determining the nature of the truth. So that is completely wrong. So can you clear that confusion? Because I'm confused. And the Brahmana now, Jadabharata said, O king, the being called man who bears body is only a moving lump of earth, an effect brought out of earth by some unknown causes, and the body in truth is constituted of a number of limbs, feet, ankles, foreleg, knees, thighs, waist, chest, neck, shoulders, head, etc., arranged one above the other. And apart from these limbs, we do not see any entity of whom they are parts or limbs. Where then is the person to suffer from exhaustion? On the shoulders of these bearers is a mass of wood called a palanquin. So he's saying here, this is the height of Vairagya. And he's saying, what do you call the body? Body is only earth. It's a piece of dirt or earth. And it moves. That's the only difference between earth, dirt, and this body. And it is brought about by the effect of earth or by some unknown causes. And it consists of a number of limbs, like the feet, ankles, thighs, waist, and all these things arranged one after the other. As Amma says, it's a bag of bones plus blood and excreta. So, what is there? So, we do not see any entity other than these parts of the limbs. And so, where is the person? So, you're asking about the person who's suffering from exhaustion. There is no person there. The person is gone. As far as a realized being is concerned, that is only a lump of earth. So he's saying there is nothing there. That person, the carrier, the person who is carrying the I-ness that I am carrying is gone. So all he sees is nothing but a piece of dirt. So he's saying on the shoulders of these bearers is a mass of wood called the palanquin. In that is seated another lump. That is, he's calling the king of Sauvira, that is Rahugana.
a mere lump of earth called King Rahugana. And with that clay, a lump of clay, seated within the palanquin, you have the firm identification, it is I. And you have besides that the arrogant notion that I spoken of here is the king of Sindhu. So you see the beauty, he's saying that the clump of clays are carrying this palanquin, and inside the palanquin is also another clump of clay, and with the notion that I am the king. So he says, he's making fun of him. He says, what do you mean by that? And you're saying, you are making these poor and pitiable palanquin bearers do forced labor without any or adequate payment, are an extremely cruel person. And therefore, your false boast that you are the protector of the people will not command respect in any assembly of wise men. So earlier he said, remember, what did he say? I am the king, so I have to protect my subjects. And I am an extremely kind person. So he's just killing all those arguments, and he says, you are forcing these people to carry your palanquin and sitting on top of it, and therefore you are a cruel person. And not only that, you boast about saying that I am the protector of all the people, the king, the great king. That won't go in the assembly of wise men. So forget it. When we know that all these beings originate and dissolve in the element earth, what reality other than the earth need we infer as the person? A mere conventional word assumed from consideration of practical life. Even what is called the earth cannot exist apart from its components, the imperceptible atoms, which are mere mental constructs of men who, in their ignorance, seek to explain this substance, earth, as an assemblage of these assumed particles. Ultimately, they and everything else have their basis only in the cosmic power of the Lord. So he's saying, where did all these beings originate? And where do they dissolve? It is unto the earth, the body, as far as concerned. And so where does this earth come from? It comes from so many components, and also the atoms which you cannot see. And these atoms, they form together and form a particular substance. And so this is so where does the power for the atom comes? It is from the cosmic power of the Lord. In this way, everything of this world of multiplicity, spoken as subtle or gross, small or big, cause or effect, living or inert, is all the creation of the cosmic power, Aja, of the Supreme Being, called differently by different philosophers as substance, nature, tendencies, time, and karma. So what you say, whether it be subtle or gross, it is all the effect of this cosmic power. And it is only but the manifestation of the cosmic power in different ways. And different people call it by different names, like nature, tendencies, time, and karma. So he says, the ultimate truth is what the sages called Vasudeva, the support of all, and the Bhagavan, the possessor of all divine majesties. He is described variously as knowledge, absolute purity, the real existence, the one without a second, the one without an inside and outside, Brahman, the all-inclusive, the peaceful, etc. So he says here, ultimate truth. You can give different names like Vasudeva, Vishnu, Shiva, Brahma, all these things, but it is nothing but the Brahman. And it is described as knowledge, absolute purity, the real existence without a second. And so what happens is all inclusive. And without bathing oneself in the dust of holy men's feet, this enlightenment cannot be had, O Rahugana, merely through various disciplines like austerity, sacrifices, charitable gifts of food, and the like, by domestic duties, by Vedic study or worship of various deities. So he's saying, even if you do, it doesn't mean that you should not do. But he's saying, just merely through what? Disciplines like austerity, sacrifices, gifts of food, and Vedic study or various worship of the deities will not give you enlightenment. So what will give you enlightenment? Bathing oneself in the dust of holy men's feet. And how? He says, in the company of holy men, there will be continuous discourses on the excellences of the Lord, thus completely eschewing all chances of talks on worldly matters. When aspirants imbibe it through their ears every day, their mind gets that highly coveted tendency to flow towards Vasudeva. So we see that every day with Amma. Now what's happening? Every day there is satsang. And when we sit with Amma, listening to the satsang, then what happens, at least during that time, at least 3-4 hours, our mind is immersed in discourses, excellences of the Lord or excellence of the Guru, and also talking about various spiritual matters. So there is no room for the mind to run away to the worldly matters. So that's what happens in the company of holy men. And he says that when the aspirants imbibe it through their ears every day, their mind gets that highly coveted tendency to flow towards Vasudeva. So slowly and slowly. And people say, what is the use? That's why Amma says, keep listening to satsang. And you don't know when the mind is going to flow completely. It may be tomorrow, it may be day after tomorrow, or it might be 10 births later. But it is certainly going to happen. How? The mind will slowly start flowing towards Vasudeva, that is the Supreme Consciousness, or the Brahman, or the Lord. And now he talks about his earlier birth. I was in an earlier birth, a king named Bharata, who abandoned attachment for everything in this world and the next, and took the exclusive worship of the divine. But due to my prarabdha, I got attached to a deer, and as a result had a spiritual downfall. In my next birth, I became a deer. But O king, the memory of my devotional past did not desert me, even when embodied as a deer, because of the power gained by the worship of Krishna. So I am very suspicious about the evil consequences of contact with others, and I have therefore been trying to move about in obscurity without attachment for anything. So what happened? Now he's explaining the story which we saw earlier. He was King Bharata in his earlier birth, and because of his prarabdha, he said he got attached to this deer, and then he was born as a deer, but then he moved with all the sages and saints, so he did not get attached to the world, and then he got this birth. And so he said, because even though he was born as a deer, because of his devotional past. So that's what Lord Krishna says, isn't it, in Bhagavad Gita, that whatever you do for spirituality, it will be retained in the coming births also. So even if you meditate for 10 minutes, that will remain in you that memory will be there. So don't worry. So just keep doing. And don't despair saying that, oh, I have not progressed an inch. You are progressing. Every time you do something, you are progressing. So remember that. There is no digression. There is no going back in spirituality. Every time you do something, you are moving forward. But you just don't feel that movement because, as Amma says, you are sitting in a big jet. And only when the jet starts landing, then you understand, oh, now I'm going to land. So he says that because of all the past spiritual activities, all the austerities he had done, he did not forget. So what he said was, even in this birth, he has not forgotten that. And he says, that's why I am trying to move about in obscurity without getting attached to anything. And with the sword of knowledge obtained by spiritually fruitful association with holy men, one should cut off one's infatuation for the world. By adoring Hari through the hearing and recital of texts dealing with his glories and excellences, one gains the spiritual consciousness that one is the Atman and not the body, and attains to Sri Hari, who is the goal of the aspirant beyond the limits of transmigratory existence. So why should you move with holy men? So they will install in your mind that you are not the body. You are the spiritual consciousness and the Atman. And so that's why he says, by listening to it again and again, by listening to satsang and being in the company of the holy men, you will understand that you are not the body, you are the supreme consciousness. So he says that is what happens in the association with holy men, that why you should associate. Because the mind is like that. The mind, wherever you put the mind, the mind is like water, in which the water sits in a vessel. So whichever vessel the water sits, it assumes that form. So similarly, the mind, wherever you go and put the mind easily identifies with that circumstance. So you need to take the mind from the worldly things, and also what happens, you should put it in with the association of the great or the holy men. And then the mind will slowly start understanding that it's not the body, it's the supreme consciousness. And he explains, the jivas pushed into the path of samsara by the Lord's Maya consider that their duty consists in following the various ways of work dictated by the gunas of sattva, rajas and tamas, and enter into various forms of activities in the hope of getting happiness. Just like merchants who out of greed for wealth sometimes enter into forests, so the jiva enters into this forest of samsara in quest of happiness, but he obtains none. O king, in this forest, a band of 6 brigands, the 5 organs of knowledge, headed by an extremely evil-minded leader, the corrupted intellect, attack these travelers and rob them of their possessions. There are jackals in it which often carry away the heedless travelers as wolves snatch away kids. They are troubled there by paths impenetrable because of the thick growth of creepers and grass, and by the attack of fierce forest flies and mosquitoes. Here and there, they see castles in the air and the light emitted by the spirits that fly like meteors. With the mind naturally set on house, property, wealth, etc., the jiva wanders in this forest of samsara. Sometimes when the winds raise the dust and blinds his eyes, it is not possible for him to see the directions, filled as they are with thick clouds of dust. And distressed by the ear-piercing sounds of crickets, And frightened by the ominous hoots of owls, he goes and takes shelter, hungry and forlorn, under some poisonous trees. To quench his thirst, he goes after some mirage in the desert. Sometimes he falls into dried up rivers without any water. Sometimes for want of food, he has to beg of relatives. Sometimes he is scorched in forest fires. Sometimes yakshas squeeze out of his vital energy. And sometimes he is put to great sorrow because of the powerful men robbing away his wealth. Sometimes he faints owing to intense sorrow and infatuation. And sometimes he enters into a castle in the air and for a short time enjoys its imaginary bliss. And sometimes in attempting to surmount inaccessible mountains, he is frustrated by his feet getting lacerated by stones and thorns, and he sinks into the depths of disappointment. Often the householder falls foul on his wife and others in the family when food is not supplied in time, and is tormented by hunger. And now and then, caught in the grip of the python of sleep in a forest, he remains as if he is a dead body. And often blinded by desires, he falls into the dark pit of infatuation, where he is bitten by the fierce serpents of evil men. Sometimes in quest of degrading sweet of forbidden sex, he comes into conflict with its custodian bees, and even if he attains to it by dint of great efforts, it is soon snatched away by more powerful people, and from them by still others yet more powerful. So I believe that you don't need any explanation of all these things, and you can understand the pictures that has been here. And he's walking in the forest where he's being attacked by all the animals, the flies, all these things, and he's explaining and different things, right? And he's tormented by sorrow, robbing people, the wealth and the robbers, and he's frustrated because he cannot walk, because his feet is getting lacerated by stones and thorns. And the python of sleep, holds him, and just like as if he's a dead body. So, and then he's saying, in the quest of getting some happiness from forbidden sex, he comes into, puts greater efforts, but it's soon snatched away by powerful people. And sometimes he is unable to protect himself against life's distressing circumstances of cold, heat, storm, and rain. And sometimes on questions of exchange of wealth and commodities, he comes into conflict with others. So these are all happening, right? And so today I've been just listening to so many of these stories. A few devotees have been talking to me about how their children are asking them to evacuate from their own house, which they built, and they have been living for so many years. And the children come and say, please get out, go find yourself a new home. And just see that how devastated these people would be. And so that's what he's saying. Exchange of wealth and commodities, and often reduced to poverty by loss in business. He may not be able to provide himself with house, furniture, or vehicles. He then looks with eager eyes at others' possessions and begs for help, only to receive insults from others. And though quarreling on inimical terms with others in money matters, he compromises with worldly relationships like marriage become necessary. Thus, engrossed in this path of worldly life with its difficulties, loss of wealth, antagonisms, etc., they are reduced ultimately to a dazed state in which one is as good as dead. So when you go through all these things, what happens? You are so dazed, so it's better to be dead than to be dazed. but it's as good as being dead. That's what he's saying. O king, in this company of travelers, whoever dies in the course of travel, they leave them there. And whoever is newly born, they take him and proceed with their endless journey. None of them have till this day come back to the place where they started from, nor are they able to reach their goal beyond the frontiers of the forest. On the other hand, they go round and round aimlessly. The brave kings who take pride in conquering all the surrounding country, making territory the bone of contention, cultivate animosity amongst themselves, fight and die in the field of battle. They do not reach the goal which holy men who have abandoned hatred and cruelty attain. So here he's saying, it's a journey through this forest, the forest of life, worldly life. So what happens? They said they keep going. They don't stop. They just keep traveling. And whoever dies, you just leave them there and keep traveling. And then whoever is newly born, you take them and proceed with this endless journey. And you never come back to the place where you started from. And why? Because you're aimlessly going round and round in the forest. And he's saying you talked about being a king. And look about all the brave kings who take pride in conquering all the surrounding countries, making territory a bone of their contention, and also creating animosity and fighting and dying on the battlefield. What happens to them? We know the story of King Alexander, who wanted to become the king of this whole world. And I've said this story, which I'm repeating again. King Alexander was coming to India, to conquer India, so that once he conquers India, at that time, all the from Persia to India was the whole world. So it was included in the whole world. And, of course, Europe, Persia, then India will be the end of this world. So he wanted to become the king of the whole world. So he was coming towards India to attack India and conquer India so that he will become the king of this whole world. So on the way, he had heard that there was a mad saint who actually was a chronic person who would act so eccentrically. And what did he do? All day he would sit on a stone, a big stone, and he would keep laughing, or sometimes he'll keep crying. So they did not understand the depth of the height of his spirituality. So as you see, when you see the realized beings, sometimes they manifest these different kinds of moods, like the avadutas. Either they just keep crying, or they will keep laughing. Amma used to do this quite a lot during the beginning. When immediately after bhajan, she would just run away. She would just go and immerse herself in the mud or the sand and in the backwaters. And she used to either laugh for hours together, or she would just keep crying. And so what happened was, this person, this saint, was just sitting and laughing or crying. So when he heard about this, Alexander heard about this, he wanted to see the saint. But being, the king of this world, he didn't want to go and see the saint. So he wanted the saint to come to him, because he was the king. And this guy was a subject, right? Just like Rahuguna. He was only a subject. So he wanted the saint to come to him. So he sent one of his soldiers to the saint and asked the soldier, tell him to come and see this great king Alexander, who is going to become the king of this world. So the soldier went and told the saint. The saint did not move an inch, nor look at him. And he stood there for a couple of hours and then went back. And he said, the saint is not even uttering a single word. What should I do? So the next, the general went. And the general went and told the saint. Saint did not even look at him, just looked away from him. And same thing. Then the commander of the army was sent. And same thing, he did not even budge. And Alexander got really, really angry. I've sent my soldiers, my generals, my commander of the army, and still this idiot is not coming to me. So I'll go and, I'll show him who I am. So he went there. When he went there, after some time, he stood there. He was so angry. He wanted to kill the saint, but he could not move an inch. So one of the things he noticed was, as he stood there, his mind became so calm and peaceful. And slowly, all the anger melted. And he became so calm. And when his mind became silent, then the sage turned around and looked at him and asked him, where are you going? So he said, I'm going to India. And he asked, for what? So he said, I'm going to conquer India and become the great king of this whole world. At that time, the saint laughed, gave out a big laughter and said, king of this whole world? And he just laughed, and that was the end of it. Conversation. So you might have heard this story. When Alexander died, he kept his arms out of his casket. So it is said that while he was dying, he remembered the words of the sage, the great saint, that laughter was resounding in his ears and saying, oh, the king of this whole world. Now he realized he's not even king of even the casket that he's going to go underneath. So they're just going to put him in a box, seal him, and let him go. So what happened to the king? So that's when he realized and asked him that this great king Alexander is not going to take anything when he leaves this earth. So he says, that's why he says, they do not reach the goal which holy men who have abandoned hatred and cruelty attain. And sometimes they are supported wholly by the creeper of women's arms, and they delight in, and are bound by the chirpings of the fledglings of babies in that cluster of creepers. And sometimes, on being frightened by the lions of death, they take shelter with the treacherous cranes, kites, and vultures of atheistic philosophers. Disappointed with them, they resort to the swans of holy men, but as they find their company disagreeable, they go in the company of the monkeys of vulgar men, delighting in their sporty enjoyments characteristic of monkeys. They spend time thoughtlessly looking at each other's faces, oblivious even of the threatening death. So it's very funny in one sense. So he's saying, sometimes what happens, you can say women's, they delight in the arms of women. You can put the other way also, the arms of men. And with the creeper of the arms of women or men. And what happens? They are bound by the chirpings of the fledglings of babies. So when they hear the sound of their babies, oh, beautiful baby, my baby. And then suddenly, sometimes what happens? They are frightened by the lions of death. Sometimes, when a disease comes, suddenly you have to go to the doctor. Oh, my God. Doctor says it's really bad. So suddenly you think about what should I do next? So you are slowly moved to do something, and they say they go into the shelter of these vultures of atheistic philosophers. So you go to these philosophies, or you go looking for people who will read your horoscope and give you some kind of advice as to how to overcome this. And you just go to any crackpot asking for some solace. But then what happens? Disappointed. Then you go to the holy men. Then what happens? But your monkey mind does not allow you. So what happens? So you go into the company of monkeys, which is the vulgar men. And you spend the time with them, thoughtlessly looking at each other's face, oblivious even of the threatening death, and delighting in the bowery tree of the home, caught up in family affection, surfeited with sexual enjoyments, and unable in any way to release themselves from these entanglements, they fall down one day to heedlessness from the tree into a mountain ravine, where they hang precariously on creepers of fatal ailments, shivering from the sight of elephants, the forms of death roaming around. So this is what happens to the end. What happens? After all these things, so one day, they are hanging precariously on the creepers of fatal ailments. Because why? Death is coming. Death is approaching. And the death is walking around like the elephants, roaming about in the forest. O king, if for the time being they are freed from the danger, they again go to that caravan of marching people, being set on this road of samsara by the Lord's Maya. Beyond wandering about in that path, man does not know the Supreme Being, who is the ultimate meaning of all those experiences. So he says, even if you escape from all these things, then what happens? You go back to the world, samsara. And you do not understand the Supreme Being. O Rahugana, and now he doesn't call him a king. Now he has become a disciple. And so he calls him by the name. And he says, O Rahugana, you too have been put on this path. Therefore, abandoning oppression of all creatures, practicing universal love, and eschewing all worldly attachments, take up the sword of jnana sharpened by the worship of Sri Hari, and go beyond this path. So it's like, when Lord Krishna in the beginning was calling Arjuna, oh great charioteer, this thing, that thing, and the greatest archer of this world. But finally he said, you idiot, get up. So he's here also, he's saying like, oh Rahugana. Till then, now he is calling him, king and this thing and all this thing. Now he says, Rahugana, stupid, get up. And abandoning all the creatures, practicing universal love, and eschewing all worldly attachments, take up the sword of jnana and go beyond this path. So this call, this clarion is for us. And not only for Rahugana. So this is for us. And in one sense, what happened is, they say, the deer, remember that during the life of Bharata, he was attached to the deer. And because of that attachment, he became the deer in the next birth. He was born as a deer. So that deer that was getting attached to Bharata and being attached by Bharata was born as Rahugana, the king, in this life. So he became a disciple of Jadabharata. So what happened? Now he's become the guru for the deer. And he's saying, now you stupid Rahugana, get up and start walking towards the path of the Supreme. That's what is happening here. And so we will see the rest in the next session. Om Amriteshwariyai Namah.
കരുണാമയിനി കൃപാമയിനി വിജ്ഞാനമയി ആനന്ദമയി അമ്മ अमृतानन्दमयी जननी अमृतानन्दमयी करुणामयिनी कृपामयिनी विज्ञानमयी आनन्दमयी अम्मा अमृतानन्दमयी जननी अमृतानन्दमयी विघ्नविनाशिनी विनायकजननी दिव्यमयी अम्मा विद्यामयी विघ्नविनाशिनी विनायकजननी दिव्यमयी अम्मा विद्यामयी बुद्धिप्रदायिनी वेदस्वरूपिणी बुद्धिप्रदायिनी वेदस्वरूपिणी बोधमयी अम्ब सच्चिन्मयी अम्ब अमृतानन्दमयी जननी अमृतानन्दमयी पुस्तकधारिणी वीणापाणि ब्रह्मस्वरूपिणी सरस्वती देवी महालक्ष्मी पार्वती शङ्करी आदिपराशक्ति जगदम्बिके अम्मा अमृतानन्दमयी जननी अमृतानन्दमयी ब्रह्ममयी अम्मा विष्णुमयी शक्तिमयी शिव शक्तिमयी ब्रह्ममयी अम्मा जननी अमृतानन्दमये करुणामयिनी अमृतानन्दमये जननी गणेश नमः ओम गणेश नमः ओम गणेश नमः श्री गणेश नमः गणेश नमः गणेश नमः गणेश नमः श्री गणेश नमः गणेश नमः गणेश नमः गणेश नमः श्री गणेश नमः फलदायक विघ्न विनाशकारी हे गणनायक शुभ फलदायक विघ्न विनाशकारी विद्यादायक बुद्धिप्रदायक विद्यादायक बुद्धिप्रदायक सिद्धिविनायक स्वामी गणेश नमो गणेश नमो गणेश नमो श्री गणेश नमो नमो गणेश नमो गणेश नमः श्री गणेश नमो गणेश नमः श्री गणेश नमो गोपाल कृष्ण गिरिधारी कृष्ण गोलोकनंदन कृष्ण गोविंद कृष्ण घनश्याम कृष्ण गोपीजनेश्वर कृष्ण गिरिधारी कृष्ण गोलोकनंदन कृष्ण गोविंद कृष्ण घनश्याम कृष्ण गोपीजनेश्वर कृष्ण कुमार कृष्ण सुरभुज कृष्ण सुखसार विग्रह कृष्ण कमनीय कृष्ण करुणाद्र कृष्ण कलिदोषनाशन कृष्ण कृष्ण गिरिधारी कृष्ण गोलोकनंदन कृष्ण गोविंद कृष्ण घनश्याम कृष्ण गोपीजनेश्वर कृष्ण नवनीत कृष्ण नटराज कृष्ण नलिनीदलेक्षण कृष्ण यदुनाद कृष्ण यदुसेव्य कृष्ण यमुना तडाश्रित कृष्ण कृष्ण गिरिधारी कृष्ण गोलोकनंदन कृष्ण वासुदेवनन्दन कृष्ण जयदेव कृष्ण जगदीश कृष्ण जनमानसेश्वर कृष्ण कृष्ण गिरिधारी कृष्ण गोपाल कृष्ण गिरिधारी कृष्ण गोलोकनंदन कृष्ण गोविंद कृष्ण घनश्याम कृष्ण गोपी गणेश्वर कृष्ण गिरिधारी कृष्ण गोलोकनंदन कृष्ण गोविंद कृष्ण घनश्याम कृष्ण गोपी जनेश्वर कृष्ण दुर्गे माद भवानी सकल पूजिते वंदे दुर्गे माद भवानी सकल पूजिते वंदे जय जय दुर्गे माद भवानी सकल पूजिते वंदे जय जय दुर्गे माद भवानी सकल पूजिते वंदे जय जय दुर्गे माद भवानी सकल पूजिते वंदे दुर्गे माद भवानी सकल पूजिते वंदे जय जय दुर्गे माद भवानी सकल पूजिते वंदे जय दुर्गे माद भवानी सकल पूजिते वंदे जय जय दुर्गे माद भवानी सकल पूजिते वंदे सकल पूजिते वंदे
सकल पूजिते वन्दे सकल पूजिते वन्दे
सकल पूजिते वन्दे सकल पूजिते वन्दे
दर्शन दे दो काली माँ दे एक बार फिर से दर्शन दे दो काली माँ दे एक बार फिर से तुझे देखने की चाहत है माँ मन मेरा रोए मन मेरा भवानी सकल पूजिते वन्दे जय जय दुर्गे मात भवानी सकल पूजिते वन्दे सकल पूजिते वन्दे सकल पूजिते वन्दे सकल पूजिते वन्दे करुणा की तू सागर है माँ मुझको तू हर ले मुझको तो हर ले तेरी एक झलक है काफी पाप मुक्ति होए पाप मुक्ति सकल पूजिते वन्दे जय जय दुर्गे मात भवानी सकल पूजिते वन्दे जय जय दुर्गे मात भवानी सकल पूजिते वन्दे 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 जय जय दुर्गे मात भवानी सकल पूजिते वन्दे जय जय दुर्गे मात भवानी सकल पूजिते वन्दे सकल पूजिते वन्दे पूजिते वन्दे जय जय दुर्गे माता भवानी सकल पूजिते वन्दे 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 अमृतेश्वरी मङ्गलम् प्रणमदा मुक्तिप्रदे मङ्गलम् भुवनेश्वरी मङ्गलम् सुखदेवा एकास्मै मङ्गलम् अमृतेश्वरी मङ्गलम् प्रणमदा मुक्तिप्रदे मङ्गलम् भुवनेश्वरी मङ्गलम् सुखदेवा एकास्मै मङ्गलम् हृदयेश्वरी मङ्गलम् हृदिलसत्तेजोर्मयी मङ्गलम् मृदुभाषिणी मङ्गलम् विजयदा प्रेमाकृते मङ्गलम् विजयदा प्रेमाकृते विजयदा प्रेमाकृते मङ्गलम् Mada Amritanandamayi Samadhamadaini Mangalakarini Amritanandamayi Sadatam Dhammadevi Vasadam Devi Amritanandamayi Mata Amritanandamayi Padilodhara Nirandar Hriday Amritanandamayi Paramahansa Padanile Devi Amritanandamayi Mada Amritanandamayi He Janani Jani Marani Varini Amritanandamayi He Srida Jana Paripalini Jayana Amritanandamayi Mada Amritanandamayi Surajana Pujita Jaya Jagdamba Amritanandamayi Sahaja Samadhi Shudhanye Devi Amritanandamayi Mada Amritanandamayi Mada Amritanandamayi Mada Amritanandamayi Om Jaya 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 Janani Vandini Amritanandamayi Mangala Arati Mada Bhavani Amritanandamayi Mata Amritanandamayi Mata Amritanandamayi जय बोलो सद्गुरु माता अमृतानंदमयी देवी की असतो मां सद्गमय तमसो मां ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मां अमृतं गमय Om Shanti 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 Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Om Shanti